Hello, Dr. Jessica Cho. This is John Watson, and this is my mini project for EDST 3550, Section 1. We will begin by looking at the Common Core state standards. The Common Core is a set of high-quality academic standards in mathematics and language arts/literacy, or ELA. There are 6 key things that you should know when talking about Common Core state standards and what they're based on. 1. Standards are research and evidence-based. 2. They're clear, understandable, and consistent. They're aligned with college and career expectations. The standards are based on rigorous content and application of knowledge through high-order thinking skills. They're built upon the strengths and lessons of current state standards. And last but not least, they are informed by other top-performing countries in order to prepare all students for success in our global economy and society. Moving on to the characteristics of Bloom's taxonomy, we will begin with the old characteristics that were introduced in 1956 by Benjamin S. Bloom. So the first one there at the bottom, knowledge, involves the recall of specifics and universals, the recall of methods and processes, or the recall of a pattern, structure, or setting. Moving up to the blue foundation of comprehension, refers to a type of understanding that the individual knows what is being communicated and can make use of the material or data being communicated without necessarily relating it to other concepts or material. The next one, application, refers to the use of abstractions in particular and concrete situations. Analysis represents the breakdown of communication into its constituent elements or parts such that the relative hierarchy of ideas is made clear and the relations between ideas expressed are made explicit. Moving up to the orange foundation near the top, synthesis. Synthesis involves the putting together of elements and parts so as to form a whole. Evaluation involves the judgments about the value of material and methods for given purposes. So now we're looking at Bloom's new taxonomy, and it's the revision of those characteristics that were part of the old taxonomy. This was introduced in 2001, and the biggest change is they're taking those characteristics which were nouns and they're transforming them into action words. And these action words describe the cognitive processes by which thinkers encounter and work with knowledge. So we'll begin with the bottom one, remembering. That's just the recognizing and recalling. Moving up to understanding, that involves interpretations, exemplifying, classifying, summarizing, inferring, comparing, and explaining. To apply, that's just the execution and implementation. Analyzing, to differentiate information and ideas, to organize, and to attribute, to add attributions. To evaluate, that's the checking and the critiquing of one's work or performance. To create, that's the generating, planning, and producing a final product. So why use Bloom's taxonomy? It's a good question, and there's 4 things I want to point out. The first one is objectives or learning goals are important to establish in pedagogical interchange so that teachers and students alike understand the purpose of that interchange. Number 2, teachers can benefit from using frameworks to organize objectives because 3, organizing objectives help clarify objectives for themselves and for students. And then 4, having an organized set of objectives really helps teachers to plan, deliver appropriate instruction, and design valid assessment tasks and strategies. Moving right along, we're going to look at 2 forms of assessment or different assessment programs. The first one is Smarter Balanced. The next one is PARCC, or P-A-R-C-C, which stands for Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers. So looking first at the Smarter Balanced assessments are broken into 2 components, a single mandatory summative assessment and an optional interim assessment. The summative assessment per Smarter Balanced, their summative assessment is split into 2 sections, a computer adaptive test or CAT and non-adaptive performance tasks. These assessment will be administered during the last 12 weeks of the school year, and I'll touch on that computer adaptive test in a moment. The next part is the interim assessments. These are optional, and unlike many of the other assessment components, the schedule of these interim tests is left up to the local education officials. The goal is to provide practice and per-summative assessment acknowledgement of a student's strengths and area of needed reinforcement. The interim assessments also incorporate a mix of computer adaptive testing and fixed form performance task items. So the last major difference found between the PARCC and the Smarter Balanced is the CAT, or computer adaptive testing. Both assessments utilize technology-enhanced items. However, only the Smarter Balanced assessment currently plans to implement CAT within its online tests. Through Smarter Balanced, each student receives a unique set of assessment items based on previous responses. In a very general sense, if a student gets a response correct, he or she will then receive a more difficult question designed to test a higher order thinking task, and vice versa. It works the opposite direction as well. The CAT assessments claim this to be a more effective way to identify a student's ability level in areas of strengths and weaknesses. In contrast, PARCC's summative assessments will not be adaptive, instead opting for a fixed set of questions. Let's go ahead and look at the PARCC a little bit closer. It's divided into two main sections: summative assessments and non-summative assessments. The summative is mandatory and the non-summative is optional. Looking at the summative assessments, it's broken into performance-based assessment, or PBA, and end-of-the-year assessment, or EOY. The PBA is intended to be administered roughly 3/4 into the school year. The key functionality of the PBA is to test students' ability to write English Language Arts, or ELA, and complete multi-step real-world application problems in math. The end-of-year assessment, EOY again, is intended to be administered roughly 90% into the school year. The key function of this summative assessments is to identify students' reading comprehension levels in ELA and conceptual understanding in math. Going on to the non-summative assessments, it's again has two major categories. Diagnostic assessment will be the first one. This assessment is designed to provide as an indicator of student knowledge and ability for further needs-based personalization. And then the mid-year assessment, MYA, serves as a precursor to the mandatory PBA by placing a focus on hard-to-measure standards. So the first sample item that I looked at was 7th grade English Language Arts, and I was actually pretty surprised. I wasn't expecting such a high-quality way of assessment. It gives a sample text here: life in the food chain. What do you have in common with corn, mushrooms, cows, and grass? And then it just goes on and talks about ecosystems, predators, prey, how they impact the environment, and students answer multiple choice questions. And in this example here, they have to fill out a little summary, and it says determine the central idea of the text, analyze the development of the central idea by using key events in the text. And if you look here, we have the evidence statement, and it kind of addresses the standard that they're shooting for the student. So the student will determine or summarize a theme or central idea of the text using supporting evidence. And it has the item number 9, so question number 9, and then again the grade level and the standard that they're shooting for. The second sample item that I looked at was 8th grade English Language Arts. Along with the numerous mentor texts and different passages that this assessment included, the main one, or key one, was an article about the artist Ansel Adams. Here's that main article by Melanie G. Snyder on the artist Ansel Adams, and this is what the students will read before answering the following questions. At the top of each question page is that table full of key information, and one thing you want to pay attention to is the evidence statement, because that explicitly states what the students are going to be assessed on in the activity. Here's another sample task. In this case, the students are asked to define the word caretaker by using evidence from the text. Again, at the top we have that key table of information with the standard being met and the evidence statement. So the one thing I've noticed is how clear these questions are. They're very easy to understand and very straightforward, and they're very challenging too. They go back to Bloom's taxonomy, and you're hitting on those foundations and assessing students' knowledge, their factual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, their procedural, and their metacognitive skills. Here we have an example of the rubric used for a short answer essay. At the top we have the score, the rationale, and the exemplar. The exemplar is just an example of what a perfect response would look like. The rationale gives the qualities that make up the score assigned to the task. In conclusion, I just wanted to say that I've gained a new respect for Common Core at looking at these things, and I'm currently in my methods classes, so I'm really getting exposed to a lot of information. But I'm really, like I said, I'm just really starting to respect it, because Common Core standards and these other assessments, such as the Smarter Balanced and the PARCC, they really are helping students and scaffolding students to get them ready for the next level, for college and higher learning. This assignment has really got me thinking about, in my future classroom, when I'm designing a unit plan, when I'm writing my lesson plans, I want to keep in mind the higher ordered thinking skills I want my students to achieve, and that goes back to Bloom's taxonomy, and then also just referring to the Common Core standards and this Smarter Balanced form of assessment, just to make sure I have a strong rationale and I'm meeting the standards, and at the same time really instilling those higher ordered thinking skills. So when the big test comes at the end of the year, the students are going to be used to being outside of their comfort zone. They're not going to back down from a challenge. They're going to be used to having to think things through a little bit, and they're going to be well prepared for that standardized test.